Hey guys, welcome to a brand new video on my channel, Meg's Movies. If you are new to this channel, this is basically where I talk to you guys about my passion for movies. This goes from collections, hauls, reviews, and today's video, so let's get into it. Okay, and I'm back with an original versus remake yet again. I will get into a rhythm at some point. I hope so. But anyway, if you are new to this channel, basically the original versus remake is just that. I tell you my thoughts on the original, my thoughts on the remake, and then give you my opinion. But with this series, I like to get you guys interactive. So I put a poll out for you guys to pick which one you prefer. And you guys went for... So, yeah, let's get into my thoughts on this one. So with Friday the 13th, I will be completely honest, I have only ever watched these films once through. So this is my second time watching both films. But yeah, so let's get straight into it, starting with the original. Okay, so just to give you a very basic plot summary of Friday the 13th, I think everyone knows what it's about anyway. You basically have this camp, which is haunted by a legend. But in the original, this is where the legend sort of begins. If you've watched Scream, you know you've been spoiled. If you haven't watched Scream and you haven't watched these films, it's going to be very hard to describe the film without spoiling it. But we all know the main character of the Friday the 13th franchise is Jason. So the first one came out in 1980. So it's an 80s movie. And I believe this was helping horror in the sense of you did have Halloween before this, but I think Friday the 13th helped push it, and then along with The Nightmare on Elm Street after that. So I think horror sort of slowly built up at that point. But yeah, so my thoughts on the original film. Now, I will say I do like the plot to this. I do think it's a very, very fun plot in the sense of you're getting to see this legend become a thing. So with the remake, you already know the legend, blah, blah, blah. Whereas this one, it's sort of like, starts the legend off a little bit, but then expands on it, if you catch my drift. Yeah, so it's the second one onwards, then goes on what the first one is. So, yeah. So with the original, like I said, I try and stay as spoiler-free as possible on this channel, even for older films, and it's quite hard to do. But with the original, I like the fact that we get the POV from the character, from the main killer. Especially since you didn't really get many POVs back then. It was sort of like, the only time you really got a POV was when it was, to be honest, the 90s, when you got the Blair Witch Project. I would say was the big turning point. But it was fun to watch the killer go after his victims, with the camera as the POV. Bit weird to watch at first. I remember the first time I watched this film and I thought, bit of a weird angle, but at the same time, I do like it. I do like how they keep the killer very well hidden till the end of the film. Let's just say the character doesn't even get introduced till the end of the film. So it's quite surprising on that one. It's hard to really talk about the Friday the 13th films because, for me, it's not my go-to horror franchise. So trying to talk about it, it's sort of a bit... This episode might be a bit lackluster, is the words I'm going to use. Because, like I said, I'm a massive fan of Scream. I'm a massive fan of Child's Play. So when I'm talking about a franchise that doesn't really mean that much to me, it's kind of hard to discuss my feelings on it. I like the characters. I think the characters are fun. Kevin Bacon's in this. This is when I think it was his first major movie role. I think this was before Footloose, though. Yeah, like, there's so many iconic death scenes in this. There's one that they keep repeating throughout the franchise, which I can understand why. I mean, that death scene in the first film is quite a bit, oof. Like, I wouldn't want that to happen to me, personally. But I will also say, you can see some mistakes in this film, which I get. It's an 80s film. You don't really pay attention to the mistakes. But when you've watched it a couple of times, you can spot it a bit more. There's some voiceovers that shouldn't have been there and certain scenes and all that. But for a slasher horror film that was coming out after Halloween, yeah, because Halloween came out in 1978, I believe, for it to come out after that one, I think it did a really good job. And like I said, it sets up a big franchise that we then get. I like the fact that we got that twist ending, although it weren't the greatest twist ending. Like, I didn't see it coming the first time I watched it. Because I think, in all fairness, I'd only seen clips from the remake, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So I've never actually seen much in the way of clips for the first movie. Not really, anyway. Not from what I can remember. But I'd say the plot is good. I mean, I like the whole camp situation because you feel like you are isolated in the woods. I mean, apologies, there's an ice cream man outside. So it's like with the fact of you're in the woods, so there's not really much in the way of civilization around. I think it is quite a drive from the camp to the next town, so that's a bit of a thing to think about. Is also the fact of there's not really many cops in a way. So trying to deal with a situation when you're having to defend yourself against this killer, it's tense. And I like the fact you actually don't really get to see the killer much anyway, not even just from the POV. But when you don't have the POV, when it is just a standard shot, you only see from like down here, you never see from up here. So I think that's pretty cool. I like how they try to set it up. I do get it set up for a big franchise that we ended up getting. But overall, for me, the original, I do get enjoyment out of it. But I don't know, with the Friday 13th films, like I've said, it's not my go-to horror franchise. It's not one that I go, oh, you know what, I feel like watching Friday the 13th. But if you want to start a horror franchise, this could be one I'd recommend if you want something easy and sort of like not too much. Yeah, that's what I'd go for. But yeah, so Friday the 13th, I believe I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 upon this rewatch. So I have enjoyed it a little bit more than last time. Because I think last time I gave it a 5 out of 10, I think. So I think it does get better upon rewatches because you get the nostalgia feel for it. You get the sort of like early's horror. So it's sort of a mismatch of sort of good and bad in the sense of, because I think maybe because I didn't grow up with this franchise, not like Scream or Child's Play. I think because I came so late into this franchise, it's hard to describe my feelings for the first one. But overall, a good film. I'm so sorry, this is all over the place. When it comes to the original film, I don't really have much to say on it. But now, let's talk about the remake. So, with the remake, I will be completely honest here, this was the very first film I watched of this franchise. So, it may be a recent bias thing, things like that. But that was my introduction into the Friday the 13th films. Plus, it has Jared Padalecki in it, and I absolutely love him from Sam in Supernatural. So, of course, that was the main reason why I watched it. Just because of him. But I actually ended up watching the killer cut this time round, so there was a lot more extended scenes and a bit more gory bits. So, I will say, for a horror remake, it is actually pretty good. Like, some horror remakes have not been all that great. For me, they're sort of like hit or miss. Because horror, especially when you have remakes that are classics, like Friday the 13th, like Child's Play, like Halloween, it can be quite hard to replicate the classicness of a horror film. But to be honest, I like it when a remake modernizes things. And what I mean by that is, with this, they explain why Jason can do certain things. They explain sort of like a little bit of a backstory. They change things up a little bit. So they have modernized it. Jason is very brutal in this film, like brutal. Like the way he runs, the way he attacks, it's just wow. I will say I do find a couple of the characters in this film a little bit annoying, but it's supposed to come across that way. I think there's only a couple of them that I actually want to support and want them to see through to the end, but there's others not so much. To be honest, there's a couple of them that I was quite happy when they got killed. But I like the fact that the gore effects are really good in this. The kills are pretty epic as well, not gonna lie. There's one that's to do with a door, and it's just like, wow. But the remake, I feel like it's very effective in the fact of they did modernize it. They dealt with more modern things, and I think what they did is they kind of tweaked some things, because they also made some nods to previous installments of the franchise. So you could say it's kind of a remake, kind of a requel in a sense. But overall, the remake is very well done, and one of very few horror remakes that I enjoy, and that I would happily return to. When I think of Friday the 13th, my head will always go to the remake, I think. So I think you guys know what I'm picking as my winner, but I'm still carrying on anyway. But no, the remake, I would say if you want to watch a horror remake, but you're not sure which ones to go for, this is one I would go for. Because I think a lot of people do actually like the remake quite a bit. Because it's not something like My Bloody Valentine or, like I said, Child's Play. So it is definitely a remake I'd recommend people watch. I will say maybe when it comes to the film, I don't think you really have to have seen much in the way of the franchise. I think it'd be quite handy to, just because they do make a few nods to past films. Just so you could be like, haha, yeah, they did a nod to that one. But to be honest, you could watch this as a starter film for the franchise. If you want to go into the brutal side of things, then this is one I'd recommend. But yeah, overall, the remake is one of my favourites, actually, to be honest, of horror. Fright Night will always be my number one favourite remake in the horror genre. But I will say, I think Friday the 13th comes second, I think, if I was to work on a ranking, which I am. But yeah, this is very all over the place. I do apologise, but like I said, with Friday the 13th, I don't have too much passion for it like others do. But I think it's nice that you guys have passion for it. I have passion for franchises that a lot of people don't. So yeah, so I think we all know what my winner is, and that is Friday the 13th, the remake. Of course I was going to go for that. I really enjoy the film. It's one that I would happily return to again and again compared to the first one. Like I said, I will say the characters in the first one are better than a couple of them in the remake. I will give them their dues on that one. But aside from that, when I think which one am I going to go to more, because that's another one of my things when I do think about original versus remake, is what movie would I return to more? Like, which one would I watch the most? And it would be the remake. Like I said, it might be because it was the first movie I watched. I mean, for me, Evil Dead Rise was the first film I ever watched in the Evil Dead franchise, and I really enjoyed that one. So yeah, it's one of those that sometimes, depending on how your first time watch goes for the franchise, you never know what could be your favourite. So yeah, I don't know what the next original versus remake is going to be. It's very much up in the air. We know this series has not been going well so far, but hopefully it will get better. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, even if it was all over the place. If you did, then do give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to this channel, then go ahead, hit that subscribe button and also notification bell down below to be notified when I post. And also leave me your comments and thoughts on Friday the 13th, the original and the remake. Which one do you guys prefer, just in case you didn't vote in my poll? Or let me know your favourite Friday the 13th film. I'd love to know. So yeah, really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!